United Nations therefore must understand, under the REDD program, the conservation of forests is only a small aspect of the bigger picture. And of course, taking the Cross River State example into consideration, a state whose people are completely forest dependent and have their people in the last 8 years completely decoupled from the dependence on the forest without a corresponding provision for an alternative, which is the original philosophy. That the whole issue about the UN REDD Plus is not about finances, it's not about just carbon stock, it's not about monitoring the forest. It's about social safeguards. It's about the life and security of the people. That's what you said. Yes. Cross River State holds 58% of the entire forest cover of Nigeria. 6,000 square kilometers of our land, completely thick forest. 6,000 square kilometers. We have a total land mass of about 21,000 square kilometers. The additional vegetation cover of another 7,000 square kilometers, which tells you that Cross River State is basically a forest. And so even the 58% is a subject of lack of unanimity in literature, because the truth is, Cross River State is actually a forest. UN REDD Plus, I speak to you from my soul, that we're in a haste for you to move into the implementation phase. Yes. That implementation phase will address the pain, the neglect, the horrend poverty that our people, who for the last 8 years have suffered a complete ban on the dependence on their forest, who will now begin to see the elixir of hope. They will see the feeling that ultimately their 8 years of patience will finally come with this glory. I understand from statistics and literature so far that you are proposing about $12 million in your initial phase, in the REDD Plus phase, or when we move into the implementation phase. $12 million is very exciting, but in relationship to the pain and agony of our people in the last 8 years, in relationship to the responsibilities ahead of us, it is very insignificant. But I must first, as an African, say thank you. The greater challenge is that as you allow a tree to stand and age, in the course of time, it will have a complete chelation of the parenchymal cells. The phloem vessels will be unable to transmit nutrients in a mechanism called ascent of sap. So the capacity to take up nutrients through the cation or electric chain process becomes dysfunctional. So as you see that big tree standing, it's actually providing cover against the young plants that would have been respiring and taking up carbon dioxide. So indeed, keeping those trees is not doing us very much good if you understand plant anatomy. Get them off. But the problem is in the disposal of such trees, you don't also want to release the carbon stock. And therefore, there is a delicate balance between conservation and management. That is what I am asking for UN REDD Plus to focus as they move into the implementation phase. To focus aggressively on tree planting. Because when you do, you increase the amount of rainfall. When you do, you reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. When we also focus on sanitation, we take away all the other sources that would have led to the emissions of methane by anaerobic digestions. We're indeed confronted with a situation when we know clearly where we are going to. Unfortunately, we don't have the financial muscle to sustain it. And that's why this embrace, this charismatic marriage that is coming today, will create a new vitality that open us to the possibilities of building a truly green economy in Cross-River State. Africans must rise and speak. The continuous decarbonization of Africa, and indeed the world, either by way of putting a stoppage to the use of fossil fuel or the increase in conservation campaign, is a complete sequestration of African economy. Africa, therefore, must take its own time in adopting all of these programs to have a delicate balance between the social anthropology of our people and the prosperity of the future. This balance is critical, and we must be careful, because today, as there is a massive campaign for alternative energy source, our hydrocarbon-based products will begin to suffer. There are countries today that have put an absolute ban for diesel engines in the next few years. The dependence on hydrocarbon is dropping across the globe. A few days ago, I was in Germany and I visited a hydrogen plant. It's obvious and very clear to me that the future for hydrocarbon is near zero. Why people project 25 years? From my last experience across the globe travel, it's indicative that we have less than 10 years where we can depend on hydrocarbon source. Therefore, Africa is challenged to seek alternative to our crude oil. While Africa is struggling with that, Africa is also told, stop cutting your forest, which is lumbering business. Africa, therefore, is a weeping child, standing before the world. We don't have the technology for alternative research. And I think that there should be a special program for Africa to catch up with the world. I'm not asking, I'm not a child of melancholy, neither do I seek pity. I just want to put the truth. And Africa must follow, but at all pace. African leaders, then just will come and speak before the world and say, yes, we do understand the need for a green economy. Indeed, it's so sad today that such powers are now called white energy. And hydro-based power is now called black energy. This is what we must change. The world is a global village, and we must all know we all have the same origin. The true origin of mankind is Africa.
Yeah.
I therefore inspire UN REDD Plus to recognize that this international organ that is focusing on cross-river state as a pilot is leading a light that will create a consciousness and attract global attention to cross-river state. And that's why I've taken this discourse beyond the frontiers of UN REDD program, beyond the frontiers of environment, to a global and African perspective of global economics. In the last 20 years, there's been no international patent from Africa. It means in the last 20 years, no African researcher, Africans have not taught. And that's where the thinking today is that black is no longer a color, but an attitude, because the black man thinks from his stomach. What is his own? What does he stand to benefit? As we all sit, we must develop programs to conserve and manage our forests while protecting our people. The modalities and detailed procedures, the validation process must focus on African philosophy on protection of the environment. It must be indigenous. It must be customized to reflect African heritage. That the man who owns the forest depends on the forest. You only teach him how to depend on the forest without exploiting it to the detriment of the future. The absolute ban therefore is contracted.